record the breakout room that you're in.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, it follows you as the host is what it does.
Oh, did it? Because I clicked on recording in our session. So we'll see what happened.
Sorry, all right.
Track.
No, that's good. All right. Well, welcome back. Hopefully I sound like people had a lot to say. Let's start with this. What is something you heard someone else say that you were like, that is something that I'm glad I heard?
So in our little breakout group, 2 of the 3 had not watched the video. So we talked a little bit. It's still, of course, within the context of the session, but Melissa mentioned that some of her kids are feeling very lonely, alone, because they feel that they have to do everything by themselves. So again, it doesn't really have to do with the topic, but that's the reality of school right now.
We've had a few presentations on stereotype threat from, who was it? Amina? What?
Mina,
not Amina. Mina talked about that in one of the books on stereotype threat. They do talk about how isolating it can be to be the only one of in a class or in a school, or even just one of a few, and that how much that can wear on you. But also it directly impacts your academic abilities in the sense that other kids will be able to socialize and connect that to what they learn. Whereas if you just work alone, and in the book, one of the best calc professors in the country, University of Texas, Austin, who gets the top scores for all of his students, he whose unrepresented minority students do particularly well, he followed them around and learned how they would socialize, and studied how his Asian students would socialize with each other, and how his white students and how his black students, and then he told them, you're going to form groups and you're going to socialize academically and socially, like you're going to do both, and this is what it's going to look like. So actually ton of that connects to this. All right, what else did we talk about?
Marta brought up like allowing students to bring their cultures into the classroom. And Marta, I don't want to take anything out of context you said, but yeah, really creating those opportunities. And a lot of it was like verbal, like, do you allow students to use slang? Do you allow students to use poor grammar? Do you allow them to speak in different languages? And really allowing, yeah. And I brought up, I'm not really good at like, I'm teaching like plate tectonics right now. I've been for a couple of weeks, but like bringing up cultures, things like that, I don't know. I've only seen it on my end is like, it just kind of comes up organically, I think, where we have students from around the world at my school, and students just bring these things up and then we talk about it. I don't know if I'm looking at it the wrong way or not, but I don't know.
No, that's an interesting point. What is culture, right? Like a lot of people have a very superficial definition of what culture is, and a lot of teachers do. So when you do a lot of discussions like this, a lot of teachers will leave and say things that are kind of like, really, that's what you took from that? Because when you say culture to them, they think of like people dressing up in costumes or like really elaborate food systems, and they think that white people don't have a culture. But really at the core of culture is communication. And like you said, and white people do feel culture when they're not around other white people, but it's very rare if you're a suburban white person to not be in the majority. But yeah, I mean, in the few times that I've been in that case, like all of a sudden I'm aware, like, how do I communicate? Do I do this? Like, what do I do with my hands? Like all of a sudden those little things that normally I wouldn't even consider start to become much more apparent. So, all right, what else did we talk about?
In our group, Gloria brought up the idea of she was just astonished that the student was able to provide such clarity and such insights into a complex topic. And for me, that was good to hear because that reminds me that we tend to treat students as maybe they're not ready for this, or maybe they can't handle this, but that they really have this capacity for and this need to go ahead and deal with this topic.
That's a great point. How many of you feel like students need adult guidance to learn about socialization, race, racism? Right? And then how many of you give them that guidance? Now, would you feel uncomfortable because you feel like you don't know enough? Because what's the alternative, right? If you're not talking to them, who is? Where are they learning from?
I can tell you why I felt uncomfortable, because nobody was having these conversations. And I was like, I'm going to start these conversations and people are going to get pissed. And I'm going to be the Black woman that's being attacked by a bunch of white people saying, why are you mentioning this in my class? Now, none of that happened, but that was my fear. But I got over it, though. It just took a while.
Yeah. What about us white people? What are we doing?
At my school in the middle of a cornfield, a lot of times I hear like, you know, that this isn't as important because we have mostly white students. And I would argue that it's equally and possibly more important to have those conversations in that type of community. So it's hard getting the conversation started. And, you know, like Tanea said, there's a little bit of fear, like it's like, everyone's going to be mad if I bring this up. And I don't know, it's just kind of taking that leap of like, and finding the people you can talk to and you know, just making, I don't know, starting the conversation.
Go ahead, Holly. You can just jump in.
I was, what holds me back, and the reason I really was excited about this particular meetup and that Scott was talking with us was I was super impressed when he was talking about what he does in his classroom at the summer conference, and very aware that I want to do that, very impressed that Tanea does do that. And I can really relate to the fears that she describes. For me, it's being a female in an all-male school and also having Asian and Black and Hispanic students in my classroom, but they are also the minority. And so it's like, I feel like I could screw it up with the white kids and I could screw it up with the minority kids, and all of them could be mad at me just because I'm the woman in the room telling the boys what to do. So it's, I have not gone past that fear yet. And I hope that I will. I need to.
Well, and I would say, you know, from my perspective, it's sort of the exact opposite of that. It's like, you know, white man, why are you in any position to tell, you know, me, student of color, anything about race, racism, whatnot? You know, you haven't been in the trenches, you don't live the life, you've never been subject to, you know, racial profiling, whatnot. So how are you at all qualified to talk about this?
My biggest question is like, how do you find time? I guess, but it's my personality that I feel like I have to do certain things and I have to get to certain topics. And I always feel this competition with the other two guys who teach chemistry and teach physics with me to keep up with them. Where do I find the time to talk about it? Because I talk about it with the kids that are members of Black Student Union, and I talk about it outside of school with kids that come to chat with me personally about it because they know that I'm someone they can talk to, but I don't know how to incorporate it into my classroom, especially this year when I'm already losing time compared to the past.
I guess for me, I felt that way about community building at the beginning of the year, especially in remote learning. Like I didn't want to spend the time that I normally spend doing all this community building stuff that I normally do, because our students don't know each other at all when they come to us. They come from all over the city. And so usually I spend quite a bit of time on silly activities, but this year I was like, no, I don't have time. I got to do da. And then the kids weren't talking to each other at all. And so it seems like it's a worthwhile endeavor. For me, I spent time playing categories, and we played Uno last week on our Google Meet, and the kids loved it, and it took 10 minutes. So I feel like in the same vein, this is such an important topic, and it helps everybody feel more comfortable, especially in my context where I have a lot of students. Maybe not so much. I'm definitely not in a cornfield, I guess. I came from a cornfield. I'm from Iowa, but so that's one of the reasons I feel uncomfortable, because I don't have as much experience. But anyway, I think the time is worth it. I don't mind being behind.
I think that there is. Oh,
go ahead, Nathan.
So I think that some students also. I think it's worth to have this conversation because some students have been taught that everybody's equal, that you just put your mind to it and you can go ahead and achieve whatever you want to, regardless of your gender, regardless of who of your ethnicity, and I think that works. That kind of argument might work for certain groups, but for other groups, it's a challenge. And so to recognize that isn't necessarily the nice, rosy experience that everybody has.
All right, I took some notes down. I'd like to give you just some feedback on that, but I want to start with the time one. So with the time one, I read a book about affirmative action, and they talked about how people think affirmative action is taking minority groups and then elevating them to become in line with other groups. But really, its intention is to be an equalizer. It's meant to be a check, right? And when we talk about anti-racism and racism, it's not intended to like push one group ahead of the other. It's meant to be an evaluation of like, are we being fair? Are we being equitable? And if not, we should fix it, right? And it really shouldn't matter whether we fix it for Black people or for Native Americans or for white people or whomever. Like, it's intended to be, look, we have this history, we have this way that our brains work, and these add up to racist, inequitable systems. So we want to track that. So when we talk about time, what's important to go is, okay, well, what's the trade-off? The trade-off is we're saying these students are going to do worse. We expect that to happen, and it's going to be confirmed. But I need to cover acids and bases because I got, like, I mean, when we say that in context of like what those two alternatives are, very quickly it becomes apparent that like, no, this is important. Like, and I think that sometimes we get used to what's going on in our classrooms and in the status quo, that we think of it as normal. We have a predictable like problem in science education that Black students are going to do worse than white students, than Asian students, that Latino students are going to do worse. And like, like you could bet on it, and that's not good, right? Like we should view that and go, something is horribly wrong here. We need to fix this. And some teachers will unfortunately look at that as like a deficit thing where they look at their students, so something's wrong with these students. No. And it's not the parents either. It's literally our education system is designed to advantage white students. And to a large degree now that's somehow been twisted with Asian students in the same vein. And so I think that when we look at time, you got to kind of go, what's our priority? And there was a book I read, it was Making Black Scientists, and it talked about how at HBCUs, the priority is what the student needs. And in predominantly white institutions, our priorities are systems. I have to keep up with this teacher. I have to do this to get to this common assessment. Like we have these systems that we really want to adhere to.
Scott,
But
can
if
you
we
say
really,
that again, please?
oh yeah, I can put the title of it. But
No, could you just say what you said again for me, please?
Oh, I can try. I read a book called Making Black Scientists, and it talked about at HBCUs that they primarily focus on what does the student need to be successful. That's their fundamental thing, is like students first. And that's not what we have at most of our schools. Most of our schools are about tracking and making sure the kids are in the right place, or systems, grades, right? We have other things that we value above students. And we would say we value the students, but like our actions don't reflect that. Right? But if you track what an HBCU does, they set it up where that kid's going to be successful. And if they're not, they're going to make sure that they find a path for them to be successful. And we don't really do that. We kind of go, here's a new path, here's a new path. And so I think it's important that when we talk about that like we make sure that we're clear that like we're currently flawed. And I think also that like we are the ones who are currently, like I'm the one who's asking questions incorrectly and doing these things to my students. I need to fix me. And I need to talk to the other adults who are doing those things too, and make sure that we have this kind of component of that. Those are all great points though. What do I have to offer as an adult? I think it's that you're an adult, even if you're a white male. And I do agree though, that you raise a great point. You don't want to go to your Black students and start telling them, about this and that. They know, they live this, I mean, they might not know some things, but I went to a presentation by Dana Shee, and she teaches out in Washington. And she did a great thing where she taught her kids about racism, anti-racism. And here's how she started it. She just started it by asking them a bunch of questions. All the kids. She would say, do you know what redlining is? Do you know what intersectionality is? Do you know what, what the GI Bill was after World War II? Do you know about Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma? Do you know about Black Bottom Detroit and the I-375 freeway? And she gave them this list of historical or sociological things and said, do you know these? And then from that, they then learned about them. And they went through and said, this is what redlining is. This is what its lingering impact is today. And so don't feel like you don't have something to offer. You do, but you might need to learn some too, and you might need some practice, and you might need some help doing that. But I would say that you have expertise that you can share with your students, and you might need a little work with kind of uncovering what that looks like for sure. So what else did I write down? These were some great questions. Yeah, at the minority students in the class, be careful with that. Like, you really don't want to, like, it shouldn't just be about them. It really should be about teaching all of your students how this works. Because I don't know, like Amanda, I run an African-American Student Association, and they have a lot of stuff they don't know. They're in a predominantly white institution. They miss stuff from history, and I'm always happy to share that if I know it. But they also know quite a bit. They have a lot of experiences, so. All right, I've been talking too much. I'm sorry. Let's do this. Let's shift. So let's say you wanted to have a talk with your group, with your class. Let's say you want to talk for 5, 10, 15 minutes, and if it goes long, it goes long. What would be some things that you might feel comfortable talking about? Let's brainstorm some ideas. So I'll give a couple examples because, I asked the question while you think, but I've talked about when did you have your first non-white teacher? And we went around the room and we had every kid talk about it. And most of them were like, I still haven't, or once, or maybe two, There's a book, White Fragility, that was really popular over the summer. And one of the things that I remember from the book was, when you're white and you live in the suburbs or you live in like an exclusively white area, you're taught that if you never experienced anything other than white people, that you would have a perfectly fine life. Like there would be nothing missing from that, right? Kindergarten, well, you would have won the competition in our group then. Mine was in junior year of college in general relativity. Although I dropped that class, it was really hard. All right, what else have we talked about? We talk about anything. I would talk about affirmative action. I think that is something that the students have a lot of conceptions about or misconceptions about, and they don't really understand how it works as a check. What else? What are some other things that you might want to talk about with students?
Why is Ice Cube trying to make a contract with Black America?
I like that one. Wait, talk more about that, because I don't know a ton about this.
I mean, Ice Cube, he was trying to promote some movie, and then all this stuff was happening in the summer, and he got upset. He said, I'm stopping to promote my movie. And he said, I'm gonna go talk to like people who kind of know like the history and what's been happening and what Black people in America need. And I'm gonna write this, he wrote this 22-page contract with Black America. And he said, I wanna take it to the government and I wanna see, if the government's gonna like respond to it. And Democrats said, no, not really. We don't there's things we just can't deal with in that plan. And then, but Trump, of course, said, well, I'll look at it. And Trump, I think he took part of the stuff from Ice Cube's plan, and he said he called it the Platinum Plan. And someone had commented, well, he meant platinum necklace or platinum gold or something, because he thinks of all like Black. He used to hang out with rappers back in the day, and they think that he's not being very serious, and he's just trying to make this plan so that Black people will vote for him. But many Black people don't trust him, so I don't know what will come of that. But, and so Ice Cube's been going around in different circles talking about, what Black people need, and they need to be protected. They need to have, the educational system needs to be equal and equally funded, and they need better loans where they're not being, being given like higher loan rates when they go try to buy a house or whatever, so it's like a 22-page document. But that would, because kids like rappers, they like talking about rappers. That'd be a good question.
Speaking of music, there was our history teacher started teaching about social justice and social injustice through music, and how that's changed like throughout history, and how music has like been a really important part of starting the conversation sometimes. And so he had, in our middle of the cornfield school, had a professor from Michigan State kind of come in and Zoom with the class. And he's, a jazz musician, plays the bass, and he was just talking about all of that. And I just thought like that was such a powerful first step in getting some different perspectives in our very limited school. It's, like I said, very isolated. And so getting kind of an outside perspective, you could just tell that it opened the eyes of some students. And I especially think for our few Black students, seeing somebody who, is very successful, who's not white, I feel like that was kind of important. So I felt like starting the conversation with music and social justice was kind of cool.
I've done especially with my AP students, and now I teach at a school within a school. We've talked about kind of gatekeeping and who determines who gets to join those programs. And for a lot of students, they have kind of a skewed idea of how exactly you get into those honors programs. And so we were able to, for them, kind of reach back at at what point did you start getting into honors, and kind of see that there was something that benefited them that wasn't a benefit to everyone, that didn't know what not everyone had access to. So it was an easy way to have that conversation about something that directly affects their lives.
In a book I read, they said that about 80-90% of students who qualify for a tag program go into it. For Black students, it's like 15%. Same scores, but somehow the enrollment is not the same, right? And why?
I've been thinking, I have friends that have been thinking a lot about sort of college sports and recruitment of athletes, and how the sports at the high school level has gotten so sort of expensive and out of reach for so many people. And that's where, and that there's so many of the elite colleges where a large percentage of their populations are a lot of their that's a significant portion of the people that are admitted is through these so it's just, there's this whole inequitable system of high school sports and club sports that's grown up very in the last several decades or whatever, but it definitely is one factor that that affects college admissions.
Class is something that's really important that we don't talk about in schools, right? This idea of like upper and lower classes is something that we just leave kids to figure out on their own.
And I think there's this perception that maybe among some of my students, that sports can be a leveling, like something that can level the playing field, and it's not at all. Because there's nowhere near the kind of access to all of those different kinds of sports programs that that you have to pay to be a part of. So
sure. Climate change, absolutely. There's a book about environmental racism. It's by, I think, Harriet Washington, I want to say. I might be wrong on that. It's a yellow book. But she talked about in Baltimore, they did lead paint removal testing on children, where they would go to poor Black parents' homes and convince them to sign a waiver of release, and then they would try and remove lead paint from their apartments into the presence of the small children, and then test how much lead they got in their systems. And you could go international with environmental racism. I mean, it's like you look at like the e-waste problems in certain places. It's really bad. But that book by Harriet Washington said that if you are in a upper or middle class Black neighborhood, you have higher pollution levels than in a lower class white neighborhood. And that the courts are very instrumental in that, because in order to convict someone of environmental racism, you have to show intent, which basically means they have to have written documentation that the reason they chose to do something was to be racist, which would be a really weird thing to write down, even if that was the clear intent. So absolutely, that's a great discussion for stuff. And the book's great. Like in Michigan, we used to not have iodide in our salt. And when they put iodide in the salt in the early 1900s, the IQ jumped up 15 points. So what that does to kids in Flint who have lead exposure, you talk about losing 10 IQ points for an entire 3 generations, right? Is how long it gets passed down through breast milk. The damage that does, because it just removes so many people from, like, your lawyers are now struggling to graduate, you know, your doctors are now barely making it out of high school. So yeah, that's a good one. Okay, well, one last thing, I guess. What do you feel like you don't understand? Like, I guess like if you were to talk about one of these things and pick one and kind of go for it, like what do you feel would stop you? Like where you're like, I would like to do this, but I'm scared because I don't know if I can talk about, what if a kid says this? You know, like, I don't know, try and test me. Like pretend you're an obnoxious kid or something, you know, I don't know. Ooh.
This isn't exactly your question, but have you ever, anybody who does have these have you ever had a student say, this isn't physics, why are we talking about this? And so is it just a matter of pointing out to them why we as adults find that it's important for them to have an opportunity to talk about it? And is that enough? Is that enough to quiet them down and get them interested in talking? And I might be off topic here, so.
No, it's a great question. I have an answer, but does anyone else have had this happen, and what have you done?
So for me, I'd mentioned in the chat when we were talking about things we like to discuss, one of the things I'm really intentional about is talking about what does it mean to sound smart? What are the other things that lead to our assumptions about who's good at physics, who isn't, and how that affects the way we interact? Because that has a lot to do with my physics class. If we're going to be discussing, if we're going to be working in groups, the things that cue us to take someone's input seriously have a huge impact on how that works. And so that's a way to start talking about issues of race and gender and other equity issues that, you know, if a kid tries to tell me this isn't physics, I can tell them, well, yeah, it's not physics content, but this is still something you need to think about to do physics in here. And that then opens the door to have some more conversations down the line.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the mistake that some teachers do is they try and tie it into physics really hard, like they try and make it a content piece. And that's not the thing. We're teaching you stuff. That's something that you need to know in order to be successful in this class. And not because it's going to be on a test question or something, but like because that's something that's going to, like Marta said, it changes how you interact with other students, and it's currently a problem. And I think that, like, for me, I always want to attack that personally and go, I value this. I value that you guys understand this. I have had problems with my past of not understanding this well. I don't want that to happen to you. And I think that the other piece is, like, you got to be genuine about it a little bit. Like, I read, I listen, and I talk about when I listen to other people, like, you know, I heard this person say this thing. That was really interesting. What do you guys think about this? You know, so I think if you do that, it just becomes a norm and people stop bothering you about it. But for sure, at the beginning, you can get some of that. Oh, all right. We got 1 minute. All right. Last thing. Make sure that you have a good definition of racism. That's another one that I like to throw with students is, like, I want you to not have like a bad people are bad and they're racist. Like, we want to talk about, like, intent, impact, you know, like, getting the difference between those is really big for kids. And kids get that when you talk to them about it, you know, like, you didn't mean to do anything here, but when you called the only black student in class stupid, that rings different for him than it would for you calling me stupid. And so you can't do that, because that's gonna land differently. And so teach kids how to evaluate that, and not like in a like, oh my God, you're a bad person, but like, don't do that again, and here's why. You know, like, we want them to kind of have a ability to do that. I find a great frustration when I talk to people on Facebook comment sections with their definitions of racism. So I'm always like, that's not what, no. Okay, hold up. All right.
Scott,
Yes.
would you please give us your definition?
I would say that racism is something, I like to say it's a comment, a policy, or an action or behavior that causes a harm to a group of people because of their race. So if I answer questions differently from students, that can be racist. And that allows all kinds of crazy stuff to be racist. And that's why people might make fun of me and be like, oh, you crazy liberal, you think everything is, you're always playing your race card. And I'm like, yes, because lots of things do cause disparate impacts, like banking, like Tanea brought up earlier. Oh my God, the ability to get a loan is so racist in this country. You would not believe it. Like, if you get into like, it's really bad. How the Other Half Banks is a great book on this, but like, that's an inordinately racist thing that I benefit from, where I can easily get loans. I can easily get cash access from family, from government, and from private institutions. And other people don't have that. And so that's racist, you know, and that's something we should address and fix. So, yeah. All right. Well, I don't want to hold everyone over because it's like Wednesday and stuff. But when do you want to wrap me up here?
Yes. So this is part of a series, or at least that was the initial goal when we met with a small team. So I'm hoping we will be able to have several more. I already emailed Tanea about it. I know that she's like, oh, what were they doing yesterday? Like this, treading in the water. So that applies to everybody. But I do hope that we will be able to have a little bit more professional development for our workshop leaders. This is also something that will be addressed in your workshops and of course in your own classrooms. I will be sharing the chat with the workshop leaders. I will be sharing the video with the workshop leaders. Probably, well, I can do it with the eWeb Live email. Most workshop leaders have been marked as workshop leaders, so they can get the information. If you know of other workshop leaders who really would like to have this information, just let me know. And I scheduled this for an hour and a half, so that it's not.
Oh, it's 8:30. Oh my God, do I have 30 more minutes?
It's all up to you, because I thought if the conversation to cut off the conversation when everything is still going well, then I would not want time to be an issue. But an hour is fine. So no.
I said I was unprepared, right? You know what though? Yeah. Okay.
That was just me scheduling
I
it a
remember
little
now.
bit
Yeah.
wide, but that's okay. Like you said,
I mean, I'll talk for 27 minutes though. I'm ready. I posted in the chat. I mentioned a ton of books in this thing. I've read new ones since, but those are some good ones and why I like them. And there's a variety. Like, there's some that are really boring and some that are really interesting and all of the things. Yeah, but wait, Melissa's presenting right now?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh my
I was
God.
responding
Now
to
I'm so
something in the
embarrassed.
chat.
This is getting recorded too. Oh, well.
So, well, that would be a plug since Melissa and Tanea and myself, we will be presenting at the upcoming STEM Teachers Expo. So all the different STEM teacher organizations. So we also have Jeremy Zakar from STEM Teachers Cleveland, and we have STEM Teachers Phoenix. We have STEM Teachers NYC in Arkansas, and they all will be presenting. And the main topic is cultural responsive teaching. So I put the link in the chat. If you still want to join, we still have openings. We have plenty of openings. So there will be all kinds of presentations, by people with different cultural backgrounds. And these kind of things will be addressed. Mina will be presenting there as well. Tanea will be presenting by herself, and then Tanea and Ariel will be presenting, Melissa and Jeremy for Step Up. And then there's a separate strand for the different STEM teacher organizations. So if you want to start STEM teachers or a STEM organization, I should say. So it would be great to see some of you.
Tanea is leading a book workshop too, if you want to join us.
I'm tired.
So chapter 7, is it 7 until the end? Is it 12 chapters or something? Or so that discussion will be continued on December 3rd.
Okay, well, I'm not seriously going to talk for 24 minutes, but I do want to say that, like, please try doing this. Like, it is a little scary the first time you do it. Practice it in your car before you do it. But if you want help, like if you're like, yeah, I'll try it, but I'm nervous, you know, like reach out to one of us and we'll talk it out with you a little bit, and we can even talk specifics about what you want to talk about and make sure that you feel comfortable. We want you to be prepared, but also, like, you know, it's like teaching. Like sometimes you just got to kind of do it, and then like eventually you figure it out after 5 years, right? And like it just takes that experience of like sitting down after and going, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And I've had many times where like I had a kid freak out at me last year, and I was terrified, and I had so many talks, but that thing I mentioned earlier where like the kid called the one black kid in the class stupid, and he had just meant it like in a jovial high school friendly teenager way. And I had then said, I don't want you to call the only black student in class stupid. That doesn't work for in here. And he lost it, right? And he was like, you're calling me racist. You're calling me racist. Don't call me racist. And I was like, I'm not calling you racist. I'm saying that what you said can have a racist impact. And then he was like, no, just stop. We're just moving on. And I remember thinking like, all right, Scott, you could bail here. He's giving you permission. And I remember feeling like, as a white person, being like, oh, cool, I can get out of this. And I'm like, no, I don't need to get out of this. I know what I'm doing. And I was like, no, we're going to talk about this for a minute, because I want to clarify that I'm not doing this to say you're a bad person, and that like you didn't do anything wrong in the sense of like you did some racist thing. But the impact of that lands differently on this student than it does on this. And I want to make that clear. And like, as I was doing that, I was like, okay, now can I stop? I was like, maybe. Okay, hold on. But I was terrified for that little minute there, because his kid's yelling at me and he's like, you're calling me racist. I'm like, I didn't mean to yell at a kid or anything, but I think I need to address this, you know? And sometimes the kids will throw curveballs at you and you're like, oh. We had another brand new teacher have one where he had a talk with his class, and then someone was bullying someone in the chat who was transgendered. And he was like, I didn't know what to do. I was like, well, what'd you do? He said, I'm really disappointed in this. I don't know how to respond. We're going to talk about this tomorrow. It's the end of class, but we're not done with this. And I was like, perfect. That's it. That's all you had to say, because now you can take your time to collect your thoughts and feelings. You don't always have to know what to say right away, right? And it's perfectly acceptable to say that and be like, I feel like this is wrong. I'm not 100% sure how to explain why. I want to talk about this more, but I need to think first, you know? And yeah, that's hard to do, all of those things, but like, think about what you tell your students. If they said, oh, physics is hard or chem is hard or bio is hard, you'd be like, yeah, so go at it, you know, like you're a smart kid, like do it. And you guys are good teachers. Like you have a ton of experience and expertise. So don't feel like, you know, you're woe is me, I'm inadequate at this, like, but you're gonna need some practice and help to be successful at it. So, all right, that feels like I should stop talking there. That was good.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. It was nice to talk to people.
People with their
All right.
cameras on and people who say something back, right?
This is wild.
As opposed
like
to you students.
All right. Well, I'm on Twitter if you guys need me, and you know, email and things. And but I know there's many other experts in here too that are willing to help. So yeah, thank you for all coming. I know it's what was it? What day is it? Wednesday? Yeah, we still have like 9 more days this week, so it's gonna be rough.